Well, good morning, and a pleasant good Monday morning to each and every one of you from snowy, and I mean snowy, Cincinnati, Ohio. We welcome you to Dialed In. I'm Tom Brenneman, joined by Luke Brenneman and our producer extraordinaire, Casey McAllister. Gentlemen, good morning. Luke, how's everything?
It's good. I always enjoy a snow day. I liked snow days the best in high school, but it is quite humbling when you're back on college break and you start to realize even if there isn't a blizzard and a foot of snow outside, your behavior's still the same. I mean, it's definitely nice. I'm still going to watch three movies today. I'm still going to somehow get fast food to this house, whether I'm driving through the blizzard or door dashing. But hey, it's nice to really have an excuse to do that today. So I'm feeling a little bit better about my Bengals being eliminated from postseason contention.
Casey, are you a big DoorDash guy?
Tom, I, yes and no. My wife and I, we, for the last couple months, have been doing HelloFresh to try to substitute out all that garbage from DoorDash. So
Yeah.
instead of it being fast food, we're getting it delivered like home ingredients. So I used
Okay.
to, not so much anymore.
Okay, all right. Part of being a married man now, Casey, and you gotta lay off the junk. You got to take care of that yourself to be able to take care of that little one on the way.
That's right.
Our show is presented by UDF and Encore Technologies. As you know, we come your way twice a week, live on Mondays at 9 here on Chatterbox Sports. Later in the day, we post on the Believe Network, and then Thursdays at high noon, you can find us on YouTube, the Chatterbox Sports page. Many of you already in the chat today. You can download us anytime, anywhere. Just search Dialed In with Tom Brenneman, and you will be dialed in. The legendary singer and songwriter Meatloaf had a number one hit many years ago. Do you remember it? Two out of three ain't bad. Remember that one? Casey and Luke don't, but many of you do. For the Bengals, it wasn't good enough. To make the playoffs, the team needed to win their game against the Steelers Saturday. Check. They needed the Jets to beat soft in the cold Miami. Check. And then needed Kansas City to win. Chiefs resting all their starters. They absolutely get demolished. It wasn't even close. Bo Nix, a rookie quarterback, throws 4 touchdown passes in a 38-0 shellacking of the Chiefs. So for a second straight year, the Bengals are on the outside looking in to the postseason. So we've gone from the last 4 years, Super Bowl, AFC Championship game, no playoffs, no playoffs. Everyone around here, it's unbelievable. You read X, and all of these people that are Bengals fans, and not so much Bengals fans, but people who actually cover this team, they're actually mad at the Chiefs for not playing any of their guys. How about being more upset about the way the Bengals played in their first 12 games of the season when they went 4-8? We wondered, would the loss against New England in the season opener come back to haunt them? It most certainly did. Who's to blame for these slow starts? Every single year. And then having to scramble and needing help at the end of the season from teams who don't give a rat's tail about your team. We will discuss. And for the record, how in the world are the Steelers a playoff team? Great defense. Give them that. But that offense is one of the worst I've ever seen. They limp into the postseason having lost 4 straight games. Speaking of New England, by the way, Robert Kraft fired head coach Gerard Mayo after just one season yesterday. The Pats, after beating the Bengals in a season opener, won 3 more times the whole year. As of this morning, Doug Peterson fired as head coach in Jacksonville. So that means the Patriots, Jets, Bears, Saints, and Jags are all looking for head coaches. Was there any ever debate about who's the best team in the NFC North? There isn't if there was. The Lions crush the Vikings to claim the top spot in the NFC postseason, 31-9 the final. Sam Darnold, dude's had a great year, but on the biggest stage, as was the case for him in college, a total flop. 18 for 41 last night, 165 yards. All right, let's get to the playoff schedule. Here's the way it lines up. Beginning on Saturday, okay? Saturday at 4:30, Jim Harbaugh, who comes in his first season, leads the Chargers to the postseason, will be at Houston, that game on CBS. Then at 8 o'clock on Prime, the Steelers go to Baltimore. That's right, you got to pay for that game. Sunday at 1, it's Denver at Buffalo on CBS. 4:30 on Fox, it'll be Green Bay at Philly. Then Sunday night on NBC, Washington travels to Tampa Bay. Then Monday night on ESPN, Minnesota visits the LA Rams. College football, the Final Four is set to begin this Thursday night. Penn State and Notre Dame collide in Miami. Then Friday night, the Ohio State Buckeyes face the Texas Longhorns in Dallas. We'll talk about how each team got there. And lastly, and I hate to say it because you know I'm a fan. I'm truly a fan. It is the same old, again, it appears, for the UC Bearcats men's basketball team. They're 0-2 in the Big 12 after losing to Arizona on Saturday. They were down 19 points in this game. They stormed back to maybe have a chance. It was embarrassing. So now next up, you have a trip to number 25, Baylor. That's tomorrow night. And then Kansas, a top 10 team, comes to Clifton over the weekend. So, gentlemen, let's start with the Bengals because we're going to have big numbers today. We thank everybody who's in the chat. Lots of you here already. And talking about, the end of this Bengals season. They win 5 games in a row, but here's my fear, fellas. Here is my greatest fear, and I've said it already. My fear is everybody is going to pay attention to what happened the last 5 weeks of the season and not pay nearly enough attention to what happened early in the year. Let's take a look at this real quick. Zach Taylor is head coach of the Bengals, okay? These are the records in September. 2019, 0-4. 2020, 0-2-1. The only good year was 21 when they went 3-1. 2022, they go 2-2. A season ago, 1-2, and this year, 1-3. So you're getting near the end of every season, and you're scrambling around and looking for help. Your thoughts? Let's start with you, Luke, on, a little bit on the game. The game Saturday, it's at the end of the day, it's noise. It's irrelevant. They won 5 in a row to end the year,
Right.
which it says something good about the culture of the team. I will say that. They never threw in the towel when they were 4-8. They rip off 5 in a row to go 9-8. But what are your overall thoughts now, waking up when you know for sure that they are not going to the postseason again this year?
Well, I first look at the schedule, and personally, I'm done playing the what-if game. We kind of did it last week on the show of what if you could have one moment back. Would it be a kick from McPherson? Would it be a poorly managed under 2-minute scenario? Would it be a Zach Taylor timeout or lack of thereof timeout before a 2-point conversion to try and steal the game in Baltimore? There's so many of those. The real thing that I'm starting to see with the season full of inconsistencies is there are some consistencies in this schedule. You once again start, a miserable start. You lose 3 straight to start your season, and one of them being a team that was set up to have the number 1 overall pick if they didn't win yesterday. And then you look, for the first 11 weeks of the season, boys, the Bengals did not beat a playoff football team for 11 weeks of the season. Granted, playing the Giants, Browns, and Raiders in a 4-week span isn't giving you the best crack at it, but that's losing games to, Like you lose at home on Monday Night Football to a rookie quarterback in his third career start. Don't get me wrong, Jaden Daniels is everything that he was drafted and hoped to be. But if you can't win a shootout against a rookie quarterback, that's another bad loss. The Chiefs penalty, we want that one back. But when it's all said and done, this Bengals team, I think they turned into a playoff caliber team. The defense in the last 2 weeks of the season has really impressed me mightily, and that's saying a lot because this was a defense that I continued to call a daycare defense week after week. And the last 2 weeks against the Broncos and the Steelers, playoff teams, they found two different ways to win. They finally won a shootout, but if you really watch that game, you know their defense got off the field about 4 straight times within one set of downs to get the offense another chance to win that game. And then the Steelers game, I mean, that was exactly how Pittsburgh wanted to play it. Mike Tomlin would have rather kicked the 54-yard field goal with Boswell to then get the ball back and then go do it again to beat the Bengals. That's how they play, and somehow the Bengals escaped, and it's only fitting that a win like that still wouldn't get us into the playoffs because that's typically the game that's do or die for this organization and franchise. So nonetheless, I think there is something there with these Zach Taylor, Joe Burrow teams where you can say, yes, they're not ready to go at the start of the year, but somehow year after year with a healthy Joe Burrow, last year's an outlier, with a healthy Joe Burrow, and they did it last year too, that they peak at the right time. They really do play their best football at the end of the season, and that's why this is so inexcusable, because you can circle 4 to 5 specific games where it's like, why don't you wake up in the first half on Sunday Night Football in Los Angeles and you can win that game too. There are so many what ifs with this team. You led the league in passing yards. You led the league in passing touchdowns. You had the triple crown for one of the first times in the Super Bowl era and the NFL sack leader. And no, they didn't not win the Super Bowl, guys. They didn't make the postseason.
Well, look, you not only have Jamar Chase wins a triple crown, Burrow, the numbers are what they are. He's not the MVP of the league. He's not. Lamar Jackson is. Lamar Jackson throws for over 40 touchdowns and throws 4 interceptions a whole year. He's the MVP, and he rushes for 700-800 yards, whatever it is. And his team is headed to the postseason. So Lamar Jackson's going to win. Lamar Jackson deserves to win it. Some have asked in the chat, the RoboBuck, what about Saquon? He's not going to win it. And I don't think Josh Allen is going to win it. I think Lamar's going to win it for a second straight year. But back to the Bengals. You have Hendrickson, who becomes the first Bengal ever that leads a league in sacks. So congratulations to him. He was the best defensive player on the field. And that's saying something for the Bengals in a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, that the Bengals would be the team that had the best defensive player on the field when those two teams matched up. Casey, what do you think? There's no way they're firing Zach Taylor. It's not happening.
No chance.
But look, players need to be blamed. Ownership needs to be blamed. And I think this coaching staff needs to be blamed. Do you think there are going to be changes on this coaching staff? Because here we are now in year 5 of Joe Burrow. Okay, 2 of the 5, he's been hurt. His first year missed a large portion of the schedule. Last year, half the time. Okay, but I said it earlier, this franchise is doing one of these. And I don't care about all the great stats. I don't care. I went back and looked at the defenses in the NFL. Of all the playoff teams, the worst defense is 16th ranked in the NFL. All the teams going to the playoffs, the worst is 16th. Okay? And yeah, Bengals top 5. Okay, fine. They're sitting on the sidelines and they're watching. They couldn't even close out the game on offense the other night. They were lucky that the defense was going against just a brutal Pittsburgh offense, because it was another case where the Bengals offense had a chance to close out a game and they could not do it. But Casey, who's going to pay the price if there is such a thing?
Tom, I don't know if we're going to get what we want as fans in terms of justice being served for this horrible season. I do think there will be some changes. I think there'll be some assistant coaches moving on. Frank Pollock, for one, his contract is done, so we'll probably have a different offensive lineman coach, which Thank God. Burrow has been the seventh most sack quarterback in a 5-year period of all time. For a team that thought that maybe we'd figured out the offensive line, nope, haven't figured that out. Defensively, we mentioned Trey Hendrickson having 17 and a half sacks. Well, that was more than half the sacks on the football team, Tom. More than half of the sacks were earned from Trey Hendrickson. The rest of the 16 or 15 sacks that this team made were from a couple here from B.J. Hill, 1 or 2 from our rookies. And unfortunately, most of those came from nobodies. They came from non-playoff contending teams. So that's got to change too. I would imagine Marion Hobby, the D-line coach, is probably in a lot of hot water at the moment. I'll tell you what I would do personally that won't happen. Duke Tobin needs to be fired. The ability to not improve this team, in fact, probably make it worse than what it was last year, is beyond belief. I just can't fathom having the best quarterback in the league, the best receiver in the league, the best edge rusher in the league. They have all the core pieces, but can't put a team together to get them over the hump from where they were a year ago without their quarterback for half the season? Are we kidding? It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. And he swung and missed big time this season. And it's going to cost the Bengals not just Joe Burrow another year, but it could cost them Jamar Chase. It could cost them T. Higgins. It could cost them Trey Hendrickson. The list goes on and on. Having a season like this is so detrimental to the team moving forward in the future of this program that I would fire Duke Tobin, but that's not going to happen. He's like this with the family, with the team, with the ownership. And I think that's the most egregious thing, is that we have given people chances over and over again that do not deserve these third, fourth, fifth chances. And it's going to cost the team long term.
All right, let's take a look at their, quickly, browse through. You brought up Duke Tobin. Look, okay, let's be honest about this now, okay? Granted, you can miss, and there have been people that have missed on top 5 picks, okay? There have been a lot, all right? But basically, a monkey can make a top 5 pick and generally hit it, okay? So the last time the Bengals had one of those was in 2021 when they took Jamar Chase. Okay, now there was a lot of debate, you remember. Chase, Penei Sewell, do you go offensive line to protect Burrow? That was a year removed from Burrow hurting his knee. And so there was a lot of debate there. They go with Chase, they hit the lottery. Second round that year, they take Jackson Carman. We know how that worked out. Third pick that year was Joseph Asai, who in limited playing time this year had 5 sacks, maybe starting to turn the corner. But I'm very skeptical. The next year they go top 3 rounds. Dax Hill, Cam Taylor-Britt, Zach Carter. Okay? Now, a lot of those guys that played a lot of football for you, none of them are standing out. None. All very young. Last year, Miles Murphy, his first 2 years in the league, has been a non-factor. Complete non-factor. And don't give me some business, say he had a good game here, a good game. I mean, non-factor, period. DJ Turner and Jordan Battle. And then this year, Mims looks like a keeper. Chris Jenkins looks like a keeper. And then in the third round, they go with Jermaine Burton, a guy who doesn't even travel with the team for the final game of the year because the coach just told him to stay home. Okay? And McKinley Jackson, who, again, showed some signs near the end. He's still very young, so we wait and see. But that, in a nutshell, is what they've done with the first 3 rounds in the last 4 seasons. And the only guy that you could say has made a significant impact of all of those guys is Chase. And that was first round 4 years ago. I said it before and I'll say it again. I don't think Lou Anarumo is to blame because all those guys I just ripped off on defense that they took Not a single one of them has helped this team win games. Not one. Cam Taylor-Britt, DJ Turner, Jordan Battle, Miles Murphy. Luke, not one of them has helped this team win. This is a proverbial Lou Anarumo having to turn chicken salad into chicken you know what.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you guys. I think what Casey said hit the nail on the head, at least from my perspective, in we're giving guys second and third chances, and we're ignoring the fact that we're in a Bengals era of Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. This is an era that we are going to talk about for decades after they're done. And when you look back, what is the mark going to be? Because we're not really going to look inside the lines and be able to see month by month what this team was, I guess, okay with. I mean, from a coaching perspective, this is my issue. If you have been on a high-level sporting team in your life, you know that the second and third string guys practice just as hard, if not harder, as the first string guys, and there's a winning DNA and there's a winning culture. If you don't think that's true, then you don't watch the NFL, because somehow the Steelers, they make the playoffs every single year, and their defensive guys just show up, you plug them in, and they make big plays. The Kansas City Chiefs, they have not scored 30 points in a game this season, guys, and they're making the playoffs. And all anyone wants to talk about is Patrick Mahomes, and he's well-deserved because of how talented and how much of a winner he is. But it is that defensive culture. It is that coaching DNA, the ability to show up and improve on every single week and develop young players to where when you need them to make a play, they are capable of doing it. The only player that I really saw have that growth compared to, say, the AFC Championship year was Josh Newton. I thought he played his brains out the last 2 weeks of the season, and he was the definition of plug in, fill in, and pray to God that he can play. If there isn't that culture around the Bengals coaching staff or organization as a whole, then that's a problem with everybody in this entire team. Because when you have this much talent in a specific place, then everybody should be thinking about the ceiling when they show up to work, and that is competing for a Super Bowl. And that obviously wasn't there for a majority of the season. So I take that as coaching, and I know a lot of you guys in the chat, and Casey, you want to call for, maybe a move away from Zach Taylor. You're talking about some assistant coaches as well. I'm at the point where you can't do it. And I said this weeks ago on the show. You can't move on from Lou and Zach because you can't afford to take another step back. They've taken 2 back, and it's time to take that 1 forward and make the postseason next year and see what happens. You cannot afford to clear house and get a first-year head coach, or whether it's a first year or not, but a new head coach in this system with these players, and kind of allow them to figure it out. And then we're all looking at week 8 of next year's NFL season on this podcast, and we're like, we're 3-5, and all Bengals Twitter wants to talk about is just let them settle in. Just give them a little bit of time. This is their first year in Cincinnati. We can't afford that. That's why you stick with the guys we have, and you ride this out. I really think you have to. I don't think you can afford to sacrifice any more time with this much talent in Cincinnati in regards to their superstars.
All right, let me ask you this. You just said you're bringing back Lou and Zach. And I'm just playing hypothetical because we know that Zach's not getting fired. We know that is not going to happen. The Browns gave him an extended contract 2 years ago, the Brown family, and that's not happening. But let me ask you this just hypothetically, Casey. I'm curious to hear your opinion on this. If both of those guys were fired today, which of the two do you think would be more likely to get hired in a similar role with another team? Zach Taylor, would he fill one of the 5 coaching vacancies if he were fired today? Or do you think Lou Anarumo would get another DC job?
I think we really undervalue Zach Taylor. I would imagine that Zach Taylor would probably get a new head coaching job. I mean, the dude has had a top 10, top 5 offense for 4 or 5 years now, with Joe Burrow, granted, but he has been a proven coach that can take a team to the Super Bowl with a limited offense, mind you, with a horrible offensive line for the last 4 or 5 years. I would imagine Zach Taylor. Now, The thing about Lou Anarumo, and I know we here in Cincinnati love or used to love Lou. The thing is, I don't know if he can perform without the bodies there on defense. And I think that was really shown this year that I don't think he can do it without a substantial amount of help on defense. Now, that's not to say that anyone could do it. I think there's a few coaches in the league that can take, chicken and make it out of something, right? But for me, the thing that's most egregious about Lou is holding on to players too long, riding guys way too long. Sam Hubbard did not deserve to play one single snap this season with a torn hamstring at the beginning of the year, and we just kept riding him out there. Von Bell, slow as hell. We continued to start him at the beginning of the year, not giving these young guys the valuable reps that they need to be able to develop. And it turns out they didn't really develop into much either, Jordan Battle and Miles Murphy. But you can't afford to waste the high value picks that we do give the defense by sitting the bench. And that is one of the most egregious things that Lou did this season, was basically put guys in there that should have been taken out much sooner. Cam Taylor-Britt.
You got to admit, Casey. I mean, you got to admit here for a second. I mean, look, if guys have performed for you in the past, and I use Hubbard as an example. I mean, he's been a good player in his career. He's never been a great player. He's had great moments, but he's been a good, solid player for you. You're not going to bench him to start the year. It's not going to happen. Yeah, in favor of Miles Murphy, who hasn't proven he can do anything.
But Hubbard was hurt at the beginning of the year. That's egregious. That's egregious. You can't. If that is the plan for him to be your starter for the season, you certainly don't want him to go out there and get hurt even more. That to me is just wild. For me, they were still starting Hubbard until he got hurt. Until he got hurt again.
Yeah.
That's egregious. I mean, you can't sit there and say at the beginning of the year that that's the game plan. The game plan should have been Miles Murphy taking majority of the snaps, because you got to know what you got. You got to know what you have there. Let the rookies prove themselves at the beginning of the year. Maybe the season turns out differently. But to me, Lou Anarumo, I think, can scheme with guys around him, and I think that's really what hurt this team in the long run, is that we neglected the defense and the needs of the defense over the offense, which offense gained some pieces, gained weapons. We thought we figured out the offensive line. Turns out we didn't. But all that stems back to Duke Tobin and the evaluation of this team. And it's so off. It's so bad that it has cost them another season. And I just don't know if he's got it. He's been gifted these picks that are just so easy to make. He had the choice between Jamar and Penei Sewell, two probably Hall of Famers in their careers. Those guys are basically shoo-ins at the end of their careers. And after that, it's been blah. It's been nothing. And he's not been able to build pieces with free agents. He's basically had to go back to guys.
Well, no, wait a minute now. Hold on a second. Look, you can't totally beat him down about the free agent thing, because when he brought in, he has his share of misses. There's no doubt about that. But he also had his fair share of good pickups. As far as, remember, Duke Tobin's the guy who brought Trey Hendrickson here. Okay? He brought him in as a free agent. He brought in Mike Gesicki here as a free agent. He brought in Orlando Brown here as a free agent. He brought in Von Bell here when Bell came in the first time as a free agent. So, look, you can be, and in fairness, they drafted Chase Brown a little bit later on. I would ask the question, you're sitting here saying that Zach, because of the offense, would get a job as a head coach tomorrow. Why did it take, if you're going to blame Lou for playing other guys, why did it take 8 or 9 weeks to figure out that Chase Brown was the best running back? That dude rushed for almost 1,000 yards this year and only started the last 7 games of the season. I mean, so, you know, at the end of the day, the blame is in a lot of places. And, I sit here and I am dumbfounded at how many people think this team should go spend the money on T. Higgins. When you look at all of the holes and when you look at the teams that are in the playoffs this year, and I just mentioned 5 minutes ago that not one team that's in the playoffs has a defense that ranks lower than 16th in the league. And here the Bengals have a top 4 offense, and yet you want to go spend even more money on your offense that doesn't entail the offensive line. Luke, how in the world can you justify signing T. Higgins if you're truly trying to win and not spending it on the defense?
This is how you can justify T. Higgins. Because if you can make it work, there is a difference in the NFL, and it's hard from our perspective as Bengals fans to take this step back and look at it. But guys, if you just look at the NFC and the AFC in the playoff picture, you can eliminate 4 teams from both sides that have 0 chance of winning a Super Bowl. There is such a difference between making the postseason by winning your crummy division in the NFL for some teams and competing for a Super Bowl. And we know that. So if you do sign T. Higgins, there's no excuse to not make the playoffs with the team they had this year. And obviously they're going to find the gaping holes in that defense that they need to at least develop guys or try guys or draft guys, whatever. The issue that I have is that we continue to settle for mediocrity. And that's what's going to leave us in a position to potentially not pay T. Higgins. I think that they will, and I personally think they should. If you can have an offense with those 3 guys on it, I'm going to take it whenever you can, because offense kills, offense wins Super Bowls, but defense gets you into the postseason. So you have to have a strong enough defense to where you lose 7 or 8 games in the regular season instead of 9. I'm not an NFL head coach. I'm not an NFL executive, so I'm not going to sit here and act like I can scheme up some defense on a budget that's really going to do that. To me, defense in the NFL is pretty straightforward. I think you have to have guys buy in. I think you have to have a really good defensive coordinator, and I think that you can make it work with the offense that the Bengals would potentially reload with next season. The issue that I have is take a team like the Detroit Lions. Their defense has been banged up all year. Banged up. Their secondary has not been healthy since Thanksgiving. But they went out and they traded for Zaire Smith on the edge from the Cleveland Browns, and he's turned out to be pretty much from heaven for them. Dominating, winning them a division last night with his play on the defensive front. So if you're going to be that talented as a team and lose guys and get depleted as the season goes on, they were at least a strong enough organization in front office to say, hey, let's invest into this football team. Let's go make a midseason move and have the players' backs, because that's what we're supposed to do in the middle of the season as a front office. There is nobody having each other's backs right now. And I don't really know if we want to go in the direction of a LeBron James-esque franchise where LeBron says he wants to play with Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, then you better let him go do that, because that's where we're going if you let Joe Burrow say, I want to play with T. Higgins, I want to play with Jamar Chase, I want to play with Mike Gesicki, and you bring them all back. I'm going to continue to say we can't afford another year of someone screwing up and this fan base accepting mediocrity inside of an organization on a decision-making level. I bring back T because you're never going to have a chance of that many weapons and talent on the outside of one offense. So that's my personal take on it. But there is certainly an argument to be made in your sense of defenses is what gets you into the postseason in the NFL, and that is not up for debate.
Tom,
and look, it doesn't have to be a great defense. It doesn't have to be a top 3 or a top 4 or a top 5 defense. I mean, you can have a defense like they by and large had when they went to the Super Bowl and the championship game in back-to-back years, where they're middle of the pack. You know, you do a good job in the red zone. You do a good job on third down. And, you know, you might give up a bunch of yards from a 20 to the 20, but then you clamp things down. You force teams to kick field goals. And your offense, instead of averaging 28 points a game, like you pointed out earlier, the Chiefs don't even get 30 in a game, and they win all but one game. The Bengals this year broke the all-time record in the history of the NFL for most losses by a team in which it scored 30 or more points in a game. The other thing about T is, and I love T. Higgins. I love the guy. I really do. He's one of my favorite players. I think he's a first-class kid. I think the world of him. And Burrow clearly has gone to bat for him. And Clement's family in the chat is talking about how this would lead to a divorce with Joe Burrow and all these kinds of things. I don't buy that for a second. Not for a second. T is hurt all the time. He's hurt all the time. There is no way that I am giving $20-something million for a guy who plays 2/3 of a season year after year after year after year. Just because you like him and just because Burrow likes him, like you referred to LeBron James, now we're going to keep him for that reason? Casey, I'm sorry, man, but I think that even most pretty well-versed football fans would have a hard time telling you who the 2 or 3 top wide receivers are for the Kansas City Chiefs. But you know what they do? They spend money on their offensive line to protect their, multi-million-dollar quarterback. Mahomes is not getting hit all the time like Burrow is. I mean, that hit the other night in the game where Joe got driven into the ground, had to go in the medical tent. That's how fast this thing can happen. Just like that, by not protecting him. And they did a brutal job of protecting him. There is no way you can justify spending that kind of money on T. Higgins and not giving Joe Burrow an offensive line that will not keep him on his feet and upright throughout the entire year. You cannot justify it.
Yeah, I mean, I already said at the beginning of the show, he was the 7th most sacked quarterback, hit quarterback, all those things in the last 5 years, or in a 5-year period to start your career. It's unacceptable. I understand that. T. Higgins, to me, is an exception to this rule, though, because there is quite literally no one else on this team, besides maybe Trey Hendrickson, that deserves a contract extension and Jamar Chase. But for me, Tom, I'm just tired of letting go talent on this team. Duke Tobin said something about trades, about not wanting to make the other team better, that he's not in the business of making other teams better. Well, what he's clearly forgotten is his own rule. You let go T. Higgins, you watch the other teams in the AFC just swoop them up. You watch these other teams around the league swoop them up, and your team immediately gets much worse, significantly worse. We've seen the numbers. When T. Higgins is not in the lineup, this team is not good. It's not good. They can't win games without him, and that's really what it boils down to. T. Higgins, when in the lineup, this team is 7-4, 8-4. I think is the number, or something around that.
Okay, but again, if you want to keep him, something else has to give. What's going to give? If you're going to bring back T. Higgins, something's got to give. You're either not improving the defense as much as you would like because you can't afford it. You're not improving the offensive line because you can't afford it. So if you're going to justify signing T. Higgins, something's got to give. Where's it going to give?
Right. I think that argument starts with the identity of this team. Guys, if we're going to come on here and talk every single Monday morning with a cup of coffee at 9 a.m. about the Cincinnati Bengals, you have to realize these executives, as poorly managed and as bad of a job as they do, they are working all the time.
I have breaking news, guys. Lou Anarumo has been fired as the defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. Just dropped a minute ago.
Wow.
Okay, so here, I'll say that ties into what I'm saying right now then. If you let Lou go, this organization has a vision and a plan like every other organization, every other sport, whether it's a rebuild or chasing a Super Bowl, that they wanted to have a defensive coordinator strong enough to kind of play the hand he's dealt and play it all the way through and be able to, say, hey, we want to lose 7 to 8 games because of our defense, but our offense is going to be good enough to get us in the playoffs. By firing Lou, that is exact proof that they had that conversation with him, or that was something that they're talking about, saying, we have all the horses on offense. We're going to score this much every game. At one point, that's what they were doing. But Lou, you have to play with these guys and just not give up 30. Just here's this. Here's the threshold. And by moving on from him, I think that is proof that this organization in the future, when it comes for future moves to come, is going to continue to spend money on offense and try and bring in a guy who is confident that he can play the hand that he has dealt and still have a caliber level defense that the Bengals are looking for. That's what I see, because that's the Zach Taylor method.
I am stunned that Anarumo's fired. I am really stunned. I mean, we know that Zach Taylor was not going to get fired, but this guy in one-score games since he took over the team is 17-36. 17-36 in one-score games. And I continue to maintain that a lot of those games they lose, it's because the offense can't finish games. And we saw it against Pittsburgh the other night. They cannot close out a game. 17-36 in one-score games. They're 10 games under 500 in their division under Zach Taylor. 13 wins in 5 years against 23 losses. And over the first 2 weeks of the season, he's 1-11. And people are getting mad at the Chiefs for benching their starters. I am really, really, really surprised that Anarumo is fired. Aren't you, Casey?
I'm not that surprised, Tom. I mean, when you are the bottom of the league in terms of defense, giving up that many points to all your divisional opponents, the Steelers dropped 44, Ravens dropped 44, 41, something like that.
Okay.
I mean, you can't survive. You can't survive as a defensive coordinator when you're giving up multiple games of 40-plus points, let alone 30. I mean, he gave up 7 to a rookie quarterback in his third week in the season. Not going to cut it. Not going to cut it. I don't care what he did the last 4 or 5 weeks. Those teams, garbage teams. And they still almost lost to some of those teams. The Tennessee Titans put up 27 points on us. Are we kidding?
Yeah.
That should not happen. Like that, those things
Let me ask you real quick, Casey. Where did you get that story that Anarumo's been fired? Because I can't find it anywhere on the internet.
It has just been announced.
It's everywhere, Dad. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Adam
I'm
Schefter
punching
just
my
posted.
phone Bengals news and the lad up to the minute. And while we're sitting here doing this show,
It's Schefter reported it, so it's pretty much confirmed by every big source. Lose out. The thing I'll say is, as you guys look into that, if you just look at the season, you didn't watch a single game and deal with the frustration and missed kicks and X, Y, and Z. It starts to really make sense why Lou Anarumo was fired. I mean, 6 of the Bengals' 8 losses is solely on the defense. Let's not play the finger pointing game at a kicker anymore or a last minute drive, because I know my dad likes to do that, and it's a fair point that the offense hasn't closed out games. But guys, this is the National Football League. This isn't the SEC. This isn't the high-powered Big 12. If you give up 38 points, 37 points, 35 points, 34 points, and 44 points, that is 30-plus points in 6 games. That is to a Chargers team that their new identity was, we're not going to score 30-plus. We're going to milk the clock by, playing slow, 8-minute drives, running the ball. Well, they scored on us 3 different times in that game under 2-minute drives. You gave up 44 points to the Russell Wilson Pittsburgh Steelers. Did you guys want to take your eyes out more watching the Bengals have one of their worst offensive performances of the year on Saturday night, or having to watch Russell Wilson go call a play in that huddle? I mean, guys, that is a Bengals defense that he once put 44 points on in Cincinnati. That was a massive game at the time. If we win that game, we're in the postseason, guys, and they gave up. I mean, that's an issue. Any defense coordinator that is NFL caliber should be able to stop Russell Wilson and Najee Harris because they have no weapons. George Pickens is not a weapon. He's a good young talent. He is not a weapon.
I wouldn't have him on my team for 5 minutes.
T. Higgins is a weapon. George Pickens is not a weapon.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say.
Casey, you were getting ready to add something. You took a deep breath there.
No, Tom, like I said, I'm not surprised about Lou Anarumo getting fired. I'm very curious now. This is a day removed after the season's over. What are the other coaches on the chopping block? Are we going to see more? Clearly, with Lou being gone, that means the assistant coaches are soon to follow here. I'm expecting like Marion Hobby, the defensive line coach, to probably get fired. Frank Pollock is probably on that chopping block too. We'll see in the next coming couple of hours, I'm assuming here. But this is huge. I am somewhat shocked. I'm shocked just like you are, Tom. I didn't think that they would do it, especially this quick. I thought maybe they would consider their options, take some time to figure it out. But usually when this team makes decisions like this quickly, they have something in mind, a plan in mind. I wonder if we're going to see some potential hire here soon. There's lots of good options for DCs out there. The one thing I don't want to see is hiring within. I need someone outside this organization to come in from a different outsider's perspective and see what we have here on defense, see if they can make something happen. Because I know what this defense is right now. It's not good enough. The coordinator wasn't good enough. The coaches haven't been able to develop any of the players. Let's get some different eyes on the field. Let's get some different eyes, a different perspective, a different voice to lead this group of men.
Well, Frank Pollock's contract is up, so I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever that he won't be brought back. That would be giving him a new deal, and you're not going to be able to justify that, if for no other reason because you just fired Anarumo. And Anarumo has a much better track record than Frank Pollock is concerned. Anarumo won't be out of a job very long. He will be hired soon. I'm not so sure that would be true for Zach Taylor. I know what you said earlier, Casey. I'm not so sure that's true. I really don't. But look, there are so many clowns getting hired around the NFL and major college football anyway that maybe they would. I have no idea. But the bottom line is that here we are at the end of a Bengals season. We are now 5 years into the Joe Burrow era. The Bengals have not played in a Super Bowl. They've been in the playoffs twice out of the 5 years. And you can say, well, Burrow's rookie year, they didn't have a chance. Those are just the facts. He's been in the league for 5 years. They've been in the playoffs twice. And he's lucky that he's still standing upright because of what he has playing in front of him as far as the offensive line. Sims is going to be a good player. Orlando Brown gets healthy again, he's going to be fine. The three guys in the middle got to go, all three of them. And I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know how you can afford to do that and bring back T. Higgins and make your defense better. And then there's Evan McPherson. I mean, everybody was beating down Cade York, about the kickoff thing the other day, and people react on X and all. Cade York has done a nice job since taking over for this team. Now, McPherson's got a long-term deal, but that guy had a brutal year. I mean, you could honestly say if he would have made, 3 more kicks this year, we're not having this conversation. We're talking about who the Bengals are playing in the opening round of the playoffs next week, not about the defensive coordinator getting fired. They lucked into the punter, right? They drafted a punter last year who doesn't even have a job anymore. So, golly, I'm really surprised. I'm not saying it wasn't warranted based on some of the numbers you guys just gave. And Luke, I agree with you. The Pittsburgh game was if there was such a thing as a moment in time, it was that 3-game stretch. Boom, boom, boom. Chargers, in no particular order. Chargers, Ravens, Steelers. Because what we saw from the Steelers on Saturday, I cannot believe that team is going to the playoffs. I can't believe it. And Troy Aikman just said, unless they go back to the drawing board and start all over. You mean to tell me Justin Fields couldn't have been doing that better than Russell Wilson is right now and at least give you a threat to run the ball? And they never bring that guy in the game, even for a change of pace.
That's the argument here. That's the argument with, do you keep Zach Taylor? That is literally where you go. You look at an organization and a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers that is no doubt a better organization than us. They no doubt control the AFC North. They no doubt dominate our rivalry with them. But when push comes to shove, guys, Mike Tomlin and his teams as of late, they are always, making the playoffs. They're always resting their guys week 18. But they're 9.5-point underdogs in the first round. So what are you really asking for as a fan? That's where I always draw back, because I wanna kind of join you with your takes sometimes, being on the show twice a week, Dad, in the sense of invest in defense, just make the playoffs. But there's a difference in the NFL between making the playoffs and competing for a Super Bowl. The Buffalo Bills defense this offseason was depleted. People were literally drawing the holes in this Buffalo defense. They were saying that the Jets had a better shot to win the division. The Jets were odds on at one point, had a better shot to win that division. And all Buffalo did was prove the doubters wrong and kicked everybody's butt, and they are going to be hosting the first 2 rounds of playoff games. So that's what I'm going to say. That is blame now on Lou Anarumo. And you can say scapegoat, you can say whatever you want. Reed Mouse wrote an incredible chat just a couple minutes ago. In Lou's 5 or 6 years in Cincinnati, only 4 or 5 of the years only 1 or 2 of the years has the defense been ranked inside the top 15. That's a move to be made regardless of what happened in 2022 and having a top 10 defense that year, which took us to the Super Bowl. We can't ride that anymore. We can't say Von Bell was great that year. We have to bring him back. We can't say Lou Anarumo was great. We can't say Sam Hubbard made game-saving plays. We have to move on as an organization, and I think this is the start. I do feel a little bit inspired by making a move this big, this fast, because it's showing, hey, we've messed around for forever. We're the Cincinnati Bengals. We do settle for mediocrity. We are the epitome of mediocrity, but at least all we can do in our current roles is try not to, and that's what I see this move as being made, because I sure as heck did not want Zach Taylor out. And you can call me a hypocrite, because that, I guess, on its own is accepting mediocrity, but there's something still there with Zach Taylor, because if you're going to hold on to the offense, you may as well hold on to, the offense's founding father, and that's Zach Taylor, because him and Joe started this whole thing. Might as well give him a couple more cracks at it.
Well, that's our main man, Reed Mouse, heart attack survivor. And he does indeed clarify only once in 2022. Every other year was in the bottom half defensively in the league. So they're doing something, at least down there. That, of course,
say that
they're doing something because Marvin Lewis was here forever and never won a playoff game. So at least they're doing something. And James Rapine is also reporting now that Pollock is gone, as we suspected. So, the wheels are turning here, Casey. They are turning quickly.
There's 2 others that have also parted ways, reported from Paul Dehner Jr., James Betcher, linebacker coach, and Marion Hobby, the defensive lineman coach, have all parted ways this morning. So
cleared out.
Yeah, they've cleared out. They cleared house, at least on the defensive side for the most part. A little interesting that the safeties, the secondary coaches, didn't get looked at as well, but maybe they think there's something there. We'll see. Yeah, I like I said before, usually when the Bengals make a move like this so quickly, ahead of all these other teams, they have a plan. I think of the free agency when they did go get Kappa and Karras, those were boom, boom. They had a plan, they attacked, they got what they wanted. This feels like, to me, something very similar. It feels very similar. Maybe they're going to wait until after the playoffs to go hire someone, but they have something in mind. It'll be very interesting to see how they fill in those positions. And I'm excited. I'm excited for a new look defense, and hopefully it's going to be fruitful for them.
All right. Well, fellas, I didn't realize this show has flown by, and we did not even get a chance to get into the college football playoff stuff. The good news is the first game is not till the first of two semifinal games is not until Thursday night, and we have a show on Thursday at high noon. So we will be able to walk through the matchups there. Thursday night will be Penn State against Notre Dame, and Friday night will be Ohio State against Texas. Real quick, we have 4 minutes left to go, and I know both of you guys watch this. I can't tell you how disappointed I am in this start by UC in basketball. I thought that they had put past them what happened seemingly every game or every other game last year, where they are unable to win tight games. And I don't even know if I would consider Luke, Saturday's game a tight game, because Arizona came in here and just blew the doors off them until a late second half rally.
Right, and Arizona's not very good. When you look at the Big 12 as a whole, every year, year in and year out, Arizona's one of the games that most opposing head coaches are circling on the calendar. This is a ranked matchup. This was what, a 7-5, 7-6 Wildcat team that came into Cincinnati and dog walked the Bearcats until it was like a 12-0 run between the 12-minute and 8-minute mark in that game, and they went on it. They went on the run that was needed to get back in it, and they still couldn't close it out. This is a really tough start for Cincinnati. I think, to make this quick, what I'll say for a little bit of an optimistic, positive light is defense does travel. And inside the Big 12, you're going to have to be able to guard, and Cincinnati can guard. Does shot-making travel, though? Are you going to be able to beat Baylor? Are you going to be able to stay at home in a rocking environment and get a big win inside the conference? Because I thought their schedule kind of lined up quite nice for them in regards to the Big 12. If you could have got a road win against an unranked K-State team that you were favored on the road, come back at home, kind of beat up on a lesser Arizona team, and then you're really geared up for what is now this week, where you have Baylor, a ranked matchup, and then Kansas, a top 10 matchup. So that's a massive disappointment. I don't know if they're going to fall out of the top 25. I would predict yes. I'm not sure exactly how volatile the AP poll is in college basketball at this point in the season. To be quite frank, it doesn't matter whatsoever. But those are games that the committee looks back on. Who did UC take care of in their unranked schedule inside the conference? What are those quad 2 games? Maybe one of those teams blows up and it turns into a quad 1 loss. All of that stuff is talked about so much for such a long season that it feels like the start doesn't matter as much. If you can't go out and beat the Baylors and the ranked Kansases of the world inside the conference, then you're in a really bad position, because the Big 12 is going to be competitive night in and night out, and they better wake up now and wake up fast, especially on the offensive end.
Well, I think you're right. And look, Xavier's having its struggles. They get shellacked for the first time in forever by Georgetown. And it goes to show you what a head coach can do there, because Ed Cooley is one of the great dudes and one of the great coaches in the game today. And he's going to get that Georgetown thing straightened out. All right, Kenner and the boys are standing by. Casey, thank you. Luke, thank you. You guys have a great rest of your day. Off the bench is starting. We're coming back Thursday, okay? So we'll have our picks, and we'll go through all of both of the college football playoff games. We'll also have all of our picks for the weekend, wild card weekend, as they call it, in the National Football League. So Kenner and the boys, here we go. Off the bench starts right now.